You okay, Mark?
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the executive meeting. I would like to welcome everyone to this face-to-face meeting of the executive in the new council chamber. Given the delayed timing of further COVID relaxation measures, it has been necessary to limit the number of councillors, officers and members of the public in attendance in the chamber in line with current social distancing guidance. As a result, only executive members are present in person and all non-executive councillors have been asked to view the meeting on YouTube, so welcome all. Council have been asked to submit any questions on agenda items in advance. These have been received, thank you, and we will deal with them under the relevant agenda item. We are streaming today's meeting live on the internet and a recorded version will be available to view within 48 hours on the North Somerset Council website. Thank you, welcome all. Welcome colleagues, welcome officers. The agenda, item number 1, addresses by members of the public. Mr. Tarr's submission has been put on the website for viewing and will be covered by Councillor Caniford on the relevant agenda item. Apologies for absence, I have one which is from Councillor Catherine Gibbons. I'm not aware of any others. Okay. Declarations of disposable pecuniary interest. Colleagues, are there any? I'm seeing none, thank you. Item 4 is the minutes of the meeting of the 28th of April 2021. There is a slight amendment to those, so it's proposed the appointment by designation to the Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority should be the Executive Member for Climate, Emergency and Engagement rather than the Executive Member for Neighbourhoods and Community Services. Are we happy to approve that change? If I propose it, who will second it? Councillor Petty, thank you. Are there any votes against this? Any abstentions? I should take that you're voting en masse for. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. And now we move on to item 5, non-executive councillors' addresses. There has been one from Councillor Haverson to Councillor Bridger. The papers are within the agenda papers on the website. Councillor Bridger.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I wanted to respond verbally to Councillor Haverson's questions. I think they're important. As you said, the questions are online. For those who don't have them in front of them, they refer to active travel, well, they refer to the Banwell bypass and how those might be able to deliver against our active travel and green infrastructure strategies. As everyone knows, probably only recently taken on this role, but from the conversations that I've had with the project team, conversations and briefings I've had with them so far, I can say that what Councillor Haverson articulates through her questions about active travel and green infrastructure is absolutely in line with our ambition, collective ambition for the project. And I think the project team here at the council feel that also extends to the consultant and contractor teams working on the bypass project. So there are some grant conditions on us as a council, and obviously the hard infrastructure, the bypass itself is funded from Homes England to unlock future development to be brought forward through the local plan process. I know that the project team, I think this executive as well, want the bypass to be an exemplar scheme, a real step change in how this council designs a new road scheme. While in the first instance the bypass obviously will do what it says on the tin, which is to provide a route for motorised traffic to avoid the horrendous pinch points within Banwell Village, there are some real opportunities, I think, in terms of biodiversity, net gain, and connecting up with the wider active travel network. So absolutely, we need to be imaginative, as imaginative as we can be, within obviously the constraints of the overall budget envelope of the project. So actually one of the key objectives for the bypass is to ensure that the project provides the opportunity to increase biodiversity by at least 10%, and we're certainly looking to secure that net gain locally. I think that's important to stress. For example, I know officers have already had some good conversations with some conservation organisations around some of our landscape ambitions for nature reserves, and some landowners, in fact, where we can seed these in delivering on landscape scale changes. So we're talking there about hedgerow regeneration, meadows, ponds, and so forth. So obviously, land access and acquisition is, do present significant hurdles. The compulsory purchase order regulations do prevent us from securing land over and above statutory requirements and demonstrable need, but biodiversity net gain is one of the factors that will inform that acquisition process. If possible, by agreement, hopefully we might be able to go further and secure land for any purpose, land budget permitting, to make some green interventions. So I actually attended a webinar a couple of weeks ago with Councillor Havison, in which some very good ideas were presented on how we might be imaginative and joined up about how we might deliver against our active travel and green infrastructure strategies. And I think there we were talking about some landscape scale interventions as opposed to perhaps a fragmented approach and some smaller piecemeal interventions. I know Karen would agree with me on that, and we'll continue that conversation. In addition, I'm looking at Councillor Caniford actually on this one. What we might not be able to deliver through the actual bypass project, we might think about how we can bring that forward through the local plan process to deliver against, as I say, our active travel and green infrastructure strategies. Councillor Havison referenced the River Banwell, and I can confirm that renaturing sections of the river have been agreed as part of the work and will be included in our overall approach. Another objective for the bypass is obviously to increase active and sustainable travel. That's hugely important to us in terms of helping us reach our council target of carbon neutrality by 2030. And we're exploring options for further highways improvements to support active travel, mindful, of course, as I said before, of the constraints on the budget and local constraints too. I've nearly finished, Chair. In terms of Karen's point about Summer Lane, I understand the concerns of the Summer Lane Park residents, and absolutely the project team is looking at how we can mitigate any visual impacts from the scheme. And I'd like to invite residents there to take part in the upcoming consultation on the bypass route, which will ensure that the breadth of their concerns are taken into consideration. And I will make sure that happens, and I'll keep in touch with both ward members about that. And then 1 minute, Chair, please, on the A38. Councillor Havison mentioned the A38. I've got much less to say on that, you'll be pleased to know, partly because I've still got some questions of my own on that one, but absolutely active travel is a key consideration of the bid. We want to promote active travel along that route, and I think it's a very pertinent question, in fact, to ask what a safer cycling route along the A38 would look like. I've noted Councillor Havison's specific asks. I'd probably say that a continuous cycle route along the full 30-kilometre length of the A38 corridor is probably not within the scope of what will eventually go to the Department for Transport. To be honest, it's probably very unlikely to be funded. It would probably be seen to be undeliverable in terms of, when you look at the cost-benefit analysis. But as I said, the initial public engagement on the A38 project actually has launched this week, and will provide an opportunity for everyone to comment on the active travel proposals included within that proposed scheme. These will then be considered and obviously factored into the outline business case, which we present to the government for funding later this year. So thank you, Chair, and apologies for taking up a lot of time with that, but I think they're important questions to address.
Thank you, Councillor Bridger. Thank you for your very comprehensive answer, and I hope Councillor Havison feels that she's had a good answer to that question. Item number 6 on the agenda is matters referred to the Executive and not dealt with elsewhere on the agenda. I have none. Is that correct, Mr. Brain? Correct, thank you. Item 7, West of England sub-region items not dealt with elsewhere on this agenda. I believe there are none.
Again, correct, Chairman.
None, thank you. Item 8 is the forward plan, which is in the papers, and that's for noting. Are we happy to note, colleagues? Thank you very much. Oh.
Can I quickly just recognise the huge workload that the Place Policy Panel are doing? If you look at the forward plan, many or a large majority of those items are going through their panel currently, and I think they should all be recognised for their hard workload.
Thank you. And of course all our scrutiny panels as well are doing a lot of work on a variety of policy things, but thanks for pointing that out and forgive me for not doing it myself. We move on to item 9, which is the Abbottsley, Ham Green, Pill and Eastern Gordona Neighbourhood Plan, and that's Councillor Mark Canniford.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be as brief as I can. Of course, members will know that this is the 6th neighbourhood plan that has gone through to examination in North Somerset. It is used to obviously make up decisions on planning applications and will sit underneath our core strategy and alongside the development management policies and plans and site allocations. It has been through 2 formal consultations with the local community already, firstly organised by the Neighbourhood Plan Group itself, and then secondly by North Somerset Council after the plan was submitted to us for examination. An independent examiner has scrutinised these plans and has recommended modifications to many of the policies, so in order for it to meet the basic conditions which is necessary. Set out in the report, the examiner makes recommendations for these modifications for North Somerset, so we can formally agree them today, and then the plan with these modifications, which will then meet basic conditions, can go through to referendum. A number of policies have been deleted, rephrased, or become community actions to be progressed by the parish councils rather than being planning policies. The modified plan contains policies to support many activities, including employment, commercial uses, infill housing development, increased walking and cycling. I could go on, but it covers most things. So it is now up to the Executive to formally approve this. I would like to thank Ham Green residents and their supporters for the submission of their comments. And yes, the plan will last 2 years. I understand it is very frustrating because of the timing and the dates and the cost. But every parish has the opportunity and the right to have a neighbourhood plan, and this is where we are today. So I recommend to the Executive to take this through today so it can go to referendum, and at referendum they will need to get a majority vote of yes, of 50% of those who vote, and then it will go before Council in November for the final decision to be made. So I recommend that we support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Canniford. I will second that recommendation, as I would like to say as the ward councillor for at least part of the neighbourhood area, my thanks to the numerous people who've been involved in the preparation of the plan. It's been a real community effort, several years in the making. So thank you for your support, Councillor Canniford, and I will ask colleagues if there's any questions that we vote to approve the 2 recommendations as listed in your papers. Can I have a vote, please? All those in favour? Unanimously. Thank you very much, colleagues. And now we move on to item 10, which is the joint bus improvement and enhanced partnership with West of England Combined Authority. I would first of all like to thank the officers, Colin Meadus in particular, for the very comprehensive nature of the report. I think having read through it, it will answer, I hope, virtually all of your questions. I think just for point of background for the members of the public watching, But I would urge you please to read through the very comprehensive report. This is a major policy change within the public transport arena nationally, and of course locally it makes a big difference as well. I mean, you should be very much aware that the bus industry was very badly hit by the pandemic, and effectively it's been funded by government directly because patronage is so low. The previous model we had of commercial services, patently for North Somerset and indeed the rest of the country, hasn't delivered, certainly providing services where people want them to be as opposed to just being led by profit. The Bus Back Better policy document that came out earlier in the year has got some very ambitious targets to get buses as one of our major ways of moving people around, both in rural and in urban areas. Our first stage is today, which is to agree to the enhanced partnership with the operators, North Somerset Council and the West of England Combined Authority. And the reason we're doing this a joint piece of work is that so many of our services cross borders into the West of England Combined Authority area, and to try and do it by ourselves would be incredibly difficult and also very confusing to members of the public using those services. This does build upon the work that's been done in the bus strategy, which we have previously seen, and certainly some of the consultation responses to that have fed into policy making so far. We are on a very tight time scale, because by October we have to produce a bus service improvement plan with a view that by next spring we have the enhanced partnership plan here. One of the main drivers for us doing this, of course, is if we decide not to do this, then government will remove the funding from services, and we as a council will be asked to pick up the tab, which I think, I'm looking at my finance colleagues, would be potentially ruinous in terms of the amount of money we have to put in to keep any level of bus services moving. We have a key role in this because we are both the local transport authority and the highway authority, so we are influenced on both sides of the coin in terms of the policy moving forward. In terms of members, all members were briefed last week, and I read the notes from it. A very thorough briefing on the whole process, and I think some very detailed questions, which I've seen the question and answers on those. I commend this to you colleagues. I don't know if any officers present wish to make any comments. I got to Colin Meadas.
No, Chair, I think you've covered it comprehensively, but happy to answer any questions that members might have.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Could I have if I propose this, do I have a seconder? Councillor Cartman, thank you. So if you have, Councillor Petty.
You need to move to the next one. You need to have a mic. All right.
Okay, sorry, technical errors here. I did want to make a minor comment just on the report around this bus, the movement towards improving our bus strategies, because I really welcome the work on how we can improve our bus service. And I know that many residents do raise their concerns with us about the state of the bus service prior to COVID and during COVID times. I believe that we won't achieve our climate targets unless we have a fit-for-purpose bus service. We need to make it a journey of choice to take public transport, and at the moment that just doesn't exist. Today already, this afternoon, I've had a text message from a friend trying to make a hospital appointment in Bristol, finding the first bus did not show up and the second bus was late, making it difficult to make that decision to travel by bus to take hospital appointments. So I believe that until we can provide an affordable, safe and reliable service, it is not realistic to achieve the modal shift of encouraging more people to travel on public transport. I hope that the government can set realistic targets and provide us with sufficient funding with which to prepare appropriate responses, because my concern is when the government offers these carrots to encourage us to make changes within the local authorities, that they don't always provide us with sufficient time with which to properly engage all the partners and stakeholders. So I look forward to this change and I support this report, but I have concerns that we have a long way to go with which to achieve what we really need to deliver for all of our residents. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the point you make about timing is a good one. It is a very ambitious timescale that the government has given us. We have to prepare the bus service improvement plan by October and have the enhanced partnership in place by next April, so that gives us about 9 months. There's only one authority in the country that has done an enhanced partnership, that's Hertfordshire, and it took them 18 months. So, you know, we are going to have to move very quickly. And yes, I mean, we will have to see how much funding actually the BSIP attracts. We don't know yet. The one bit of the guidance the government hasn't yet issued is the funding guidance. That is due later this month, though the briefings I've heard from officials make me think it's not going to say as much as we would like, and actually a lot will depend on the spending review in the autumn to set out the full details of the funding. What we do know is that nationally they've set aside £3 billion to support this work up to 2025, which is undoubtedly an increase on the funding that buses have attracted historically from government. So we think there will be more money available, but whether it will be sufficient to do everything we would like to achieve remains to be seen.
Thank you, Colin. I mean, I thank you, Bridget, as well for your question. I do think it's for us to hold the government's feet to the fire in terms of delivering on funding for this, and indeed making sure we have the powers necessary to deliver and the resources to do so as well. That's both locally and nationally. So, as a proposer and seconder, can we have the vote, please, colleagues? All vote in favour? Councillor Bridger, are you not voting in favour? Oh, yes, that's unanimous, and thank you, colleagues. And we move on to item number 11, which is the draft education revision in North Somerset. Now, sadly, Catherine Gibbons can't be with us today for family reasons, and Councillor Steve Bridges very kindly offered to take this piece for her. And I hope that our Director, Sheila Smith, is available for any questions as well. Thank you. Steve.
Thank you, Don. Yeah, I'm not sure if can do this the justice that Catherine would have done, but I'll try my best. I wanted actually, there's quite a bit to say, but hopefully no more than 3 or 4 minutes. It's a big chunky report, as you would have seen. There's a lot of information in there, a lot of data. So first, I think thanks to the officer team, thank you Sheila, Sally Varley in particular, all the officers really worked on this piece of work. And to Catherine, of course, herself, for steering it, and scrutiny for their valued input, both before and reviewing the consultation responses in particular. So this is an important strategic document. It sets out how the Council's statutory obligations of securing sufficient school places can be delivered. We've consulted the public, we've consulted schools, all the academies and local key stakeholders, and I'm pleased to say that broadly there's overall support for the recommendations and principles contained in this report, in the strategy. The report to the Executive today provides an update on the outcomes of the consultations that have taken place and recommends a final plan for implementation to cover a 3-year period from September this year to August 2024. You'll note perhaps that the track changes have been left in the report at this stage to show the amendments following the consultation. Obviously, if and once this document is approved, the plan will be published in its final form. So I think, as I said, it's worth noting that while the plan only covers a 3-year period, the strategies within the document are also underpinned by our sort of longer term aspirations, and in particular, obviously, the developing local plan, which is in process. Colleagues, I know that you will all be aware that the Council's role in running schools is changing. Has changed an awful lot very recently. We're now mainly a commissioner of school places. 78% of our schools in North Somerset are academies, and that percentage is rising. We only maintain 17 schools ourselves as a local educational authority. We've managed to offer all our school-aged residents a place at the local school, and this obviously is legal duty on us and should be sustainable for the period of this plan. To do that, we created 766 new permanent primary school places, 690 new permanent secondary places, and 76 new permanent special school places over the last 3 years. While our principles outlined in the report remain, mostly unchanged, I think Catherine would probably want me to say that, our key role now is, and this is really important, is to act as champions for parents, champions for children, and our local communities. So this commissioning strategy, or set of strategies really, set out in the report it's complex to deliver when we're no longer the decision maker for many school structural changes making place. So again, I know Catherine would want us to highlight the increasing importance of partnership working. Many areas of the council's work these days involve partnership working, an increasing amount of partnership working. And our commitment to maintaining strong links with existing and new partners as equals to meet demand for mainstream and special educational needs and disability school places in the right locations. So those partners, obviously the schools, local multi-academy trusts, the Diocese of Clifton and Bath and Wells, early years providers, private, voluntary and independent organisations, and obviously the regional schools commissioner. It's a growing list, actually. All of our educational settings are highly valued and have a major impact on the lives of children and on communities, and they're absolutely central in contributing towards achieving the aims and aspirations of this council articulated in our corporate plan. Now, I mentioned school places in the right locations, as ideally we want school places as close to people, where people live as possible, especially on new and future housing developments. So, to be honest about it, that can cause some tension sometimes with the trusts, where our proposals support the increase of a provision in a school. They're supported usually by the multi-academy trust. Where there may be a decline in existing provision, then perhaps less so, and there's a conversation that we have with those schools. I think elected members in the future will probably need to act on behalf of, in order to act on the best interests of residents. We may have to make some, now and again, some unpopular decisions to meet our climate emergency priorities, for example, and which include a reduction in the need for home-to-school transport. So, for example, we might suggest or hopefully support a school in terms of decreasing the capacity of a current school in an area where there's an existing school to ensure the viability of a new school in that location. That's certainly the case in my ward in Yatton. The aspiration really there is that obviously we want as far as possible children to be able to walk or cycle or scoot to school, and hopefully as we move on in the future, home to school transport will become the exception rather than the rule for some of the parts of the district. It's worth mentioning, I think, that 2 new primary schools have opened in the last 3 years, and a further 1 or 2 will be needed in the life of this 3-year plan. I'm delighted that we've got a new school completed and ready to open in Yatton, in my ward, in September. There are plans for expansions in secondary places in Portishead and Weston, including the £30 million expansion of Winterstoke 100 Academy, which is with the Banwell bypass, part of obviously the HIF money we've received from government. So, colleagues, this is a very detailed document, and I hope that all elected members will read it. I know Catherine hopes that everyone will have a chance to look at this in detail, look at the data which supports the strategy, as well as particularly noting some of the tweaks we've made to some of the principles underpinning the commissioning strategy. So that's sections 3.3 to 3.5 and I think 3.14 as well. All elected members are corporate parents, and it's a real challenge for the council to manage the significant increases in demand for SEND places. So, for example, in 2015 there were 534 education, health and care plans. This year there are over 1,000, and it's predicted that figure will climb to over 1,500 by 2025. So some real challenges there. Section 3.13 in the report outlines our plans to increase provision of SEND places between 2021 and 2024. Obviously the expansion of Baytree and a new Department for Education funded social and emotional mental health school at Churchill are two high profile examples of much needed additional SEND provision. I think I'll stop there, Chair. I know Catherine would like to thank everyone who's worked so hard to produce this updated strategy. I know she would want ideally to be here herself to publicly thank everyone. Catherine has asked that if any elected members, or anyone really, if anyone has any questions, they should feel free to get in touch with her by email with any questions they might want to raise. So thank you, Chair, and I recommend the Executive approves the plan.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a seconder? Councillor Solomon, thank you. Our Director, Sheila Smith, did you want to make any further comments? No, thank you. Thank you for a very comprehensive report, Steve. Any questions from colleagues?
Just one for me, please.
Okay, please, Mark.
You go. Carry on.
No.
This will have to be aimed at our director. Around discussions with other trusts and around the expansion of schooling, this is, I'm assuming, generally up to 16, the places that we're concentrating on. It was all education. And what discussions did we have with the Priory Learning Trust? Not something I have a connection with, but I just wondered, because they're an extremely good trust, and we seem to be going out of county to another trust.
We have discussions with all of our trusts. So we have something called the Educational Excellence Partnership Board, at which all trusts are represented, and indeed Priory are represented there by a number of their senior staff. And that's when we talk to them specifically as a whole group, but also obviously as has been outlined, this document's gone far and wide across everybody. It's also not the first time a document like this has been done. We've done it a number of years, so people know the path. It's quite a well-worn path. So what I would say to you is everybody's had the opportunity, and we are in dialogue from time to time with particular trusts as they express interests, and I just would assure you that as we speak, I'm about to send out an email. You'll have noticed in the strategy that there's a small sum of money available that we've got in regard to increasing the level of SEND resource that's attached to mainstreams and so on. And so I'm about to invite expressions of interest from all of our providers as to whether or not they'd be interested in pursuing, albeit those small sums of money, to help us to reduce the pressure on the high needs block, which is the spend that's within the dedicated schools grant. So long answer, but yes, Priory I have been at the table in the same way as everybody else has.
And that's good to know that they've been in the position and have chosen either not to engage in that. In terms of the SEND, I assume that we engage with the college quite considerably based on their high quality SEND agenda.
Indeed.
And I do have an interest, well, I don't have an interest, but I am a governor of the college.
Indeed, I am aware. So I can say that only last week, the Chief Executive and I were in discussion with Paul Phillips from the college and his colleagues about ways in which they're going to hopefully work with us around workforce issues and our LJAR accelerated progress plan. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got a proposer and seconder. I see no more questions. All those in favour of adopting the recommendations? I see no votes against. That's passed unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Sheila, and thank on behalf of the Executive all your colleagues who this incredibly detailed document, which I did have the pleasure of reading over the weekend, so thank you. We move on to item number 12, which is Councillor Mark Hannaford, the adoption of the local list nomination criteria and procedure. Okay,
thank you. I'll again be as quick as I can. I'd like to recommend that we adopt this policy. Just for those, a local list is a way local communities in North Somerset can celebrate unique histories in special areas. This includes historic buildings, archaeological sites, parks, gardens, identifying heritage assets that don't actually qualify for national significance, so they don't come under the grade 1, 2, 3 or schedule monument classifications. I think it's fair to say we all know that North Somerset has a rich history of buildings, structures and sites, gardens, and this will help us include those locally important sites in our local list, which will give council and communities the opportunity to give assets some consideration through the planning processes. Members of the public can nominate heritage sites and assets, which will then be considered by a panel which has been set up, and the criteria has been set up through this report. The local list gives councils and local communities a chance to recognise buildings and heritage assets, but I think just one thing I would like to say is the panel that will judge all of these sites are a voluntary panel, and they're on a voluntary basis. They clearly have an understanding, professional people in that field, and I would like to thank them from us as a council for giving us that time and commitment. So this will protect sites in North Somerset, and it will also give the community a far greater say in what should be protected and what they feel is important to them, and I think that stands very well in our open and our fair agenda in this council, so I'd like us to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaford. Do I see a seconder for this you're recommending? Councillor Cartman, thank you. Just one quick question from me, but have colleagues got any questions themselves before we get? Okay. I had a conversation with one of my parish councils on Monday, Councillor Hannaford, about parish council responses, which I guess in some ways will be at least as valuable as individual responses because they can be a little bit more global in their approach for their own areas.
Indeed, but they will still go through the panel, and the
yes,
panel
absolutely.
will judge whether they have significance or they are significantly important enough to list them. But yes,
thank you very much. Thank you. So no questions I can see. We've got a recommendation here. We were proposed and seconded. Do I see votes in favour? I see none against, so that's passed unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. And now we move on to item 13, which is Councillor Ash Cartman on the Budget Monitor Month 12 Outturn Report. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I think I'd like to pass over to Amy Webb, who's our, well, for people who are watching, our new Director of Corporate Services. Welcome, Amy, for any comments she may have, and then I'll perhaps finish up with a couple of my own comments if Amy has anything she'd like to go through.
And lovely. And Amy, welcome. This is your first formal meeting, I understand. So welcome to this from all of us in North Somerset.
Thank you, everybody. Hopefully the microphone is picking up. Thank you to Councillor Cartman for the opportunity to comment. So this is the report covering the financial outturn for the year ending March 2021. It's a reasonably positive position in terms of the revenue budget outturn, although the significant contributory factor to that was actually the receipt of significant COVID grants from central government. So whilst there was a small underspend against the revenue budget, the majority of those were those COVID grants. So there's obviously a need to continue to deliver against those central government priorities that were set in 2021 into 21-22, the current year. So the report outlines the significant movements against the revenue and capital budgets and recommends some amendments in Appendix 1, and furthermore talks about the general reserve balance and the movements into earmarked reserves of those COVID grants, and finally the recommendation around the use of the underspend to support capital risks going forward. But that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, and certainly welcome to colleagues for the very comprehensive report, which again came after this on Saturday afternoon. So, Councillor Cartman.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add a few comments. I mean, it's clearly a really detailed and technical report, so thank you for Amy and the team for putting this together. I think the key message, though, like Amy's just said, is kind of on page 3. It's been a very difficult year, so to come out with a balanced budget is an achievement given what we faced, little over 12 months ago. We set a budget for 166 million and spent 200. So that just gives you a flavour of what we had to deal with. I think also just for executive colleagues is continuing uncertainty, of course, in terms of the financial background. Adult social care demand continues to rise, which we've seen, and with inflation going up and our ability to raise council tax limited to 2%, our financial pressure will only get worse. So I think that's what I'll say. I say there's some capital amendments at the back as well, so I'd like to highlight those as well. I mean, that's an extra 3.3 billion, or it's a third of £1 billion capital programme we've got now, so huge investment in our local community. And so another 3.3, of which half of that is broadly being allocated to road maintenance and repairs to try and keep our road network up to scratch for all users. I would just kind of summarise and say then, please, you can see the recommendations on the front of the report. I recommend we adopt all 4 of those and ask for a seconder, please.
Okay, so Councillor Cartman proposing, Councillor Mike Solomon seconding. Do we have any questions? I think Councillor Mike Bell wanted to ask a question.
It's not really a question, but I suppose I could frame it as, does Councillor Cartman agree with what I'm about to say? I just wanted to just expand on something you alluded to at the end there, Councillor Cartman, about social care, and I think it's really telling that when we look at the outturn report, we can see that we ended up spending £14 million or 23% more on what was already by far and away the biggest share of our budget on social care services, and a lot of that was directly related to the COVID pandemic, but a lot of it was also linked to the increased pressures and costs that we've got from business as usual delivery of services. And what it does emphasise is that we've got 3 particular challenges facing social care that the government has really got to do something about. The first is that we do need more money for short-term stabilisation. So although there has been infection control funding and other resources from government to support social care through local councils, we know that there are still real short-term pressures, and particularly in our residential and nursing care home sector, where the declining occupancy rates that we've seen in care homes have put real pressure on the viability, the financial viability of local care homes, and that has really dire consequences in the long run. Firstly, local councils can't afford to pay to prop them up. Secondly, the people living in them face uncertainty and risk in terms of where they might end up. And thirdly, we might see good, successful homes going out of business because of the financial pressures. So we need some urgent stabilisation funding. Secondly, we need that long-term sustainable plan for social care that it feels like we talk about at every single meeting of the Executive and Council. Apparently the Prime Minister and the Chancellor and the Secretary of State for Health were supposed to meet last week to discuss their plan, but then the meeting got cancelled, and it doesn't give you much confidence, does it, to learn that one minister said that he didn't know the meeting was happening and he didn't know it had been cancelled either. So, let's better not hold our breath there. But it does underline that it's critically important that we get that long-term plan. And the third one is about some funding for innovation and delivering a more modern system of social care, because that's the other area where government has opted for sticking plaster solutions to get us through each financial crisis in the care sector year after year, when what we need is a different model and a sustainable model for social care. And that means investing in things like a fairer deal for staff. We're going to encounter, as all sectors of industry are finding at the moment, real challenges around the recruitment of care staff, but we also need to get more financial support into carers as well, who are doing so much to support their families and their friends and their communities. So that's my pitch to government, and we will be writing as a council to the government to push on these points. We need some more stabilisation funding to get us through the next few months. We need that long-term plan, and we need money for innovation, and I'm sure that Councillor Cartman will completely agree with that assessment.
Yes, I do, and I have to admit, I'm quite shocked that they didn't even know a meeting was happened and then it was cancelled. I didn't even know that, but at least we've got a new royal yacht.
Well, we do know
That's all I can
the
say.
key word, don't we? Mr. Cummings told us the key word for cabinet, isn't it? Hopeless.
Yes, I mean, I
Councillor
am
Solomon.
speechless.
You might be another word, but this is being broadcast on YouTube.
But yes, I would agree with everything.
Councillor Solomon, is your question going to be as long as Councillor Bell's, or do you think it could be slightly shorter?
It's going to be a lot longer. It's
All right, okay.
At least 30 minutes. No, it's a very quick one, and it's again, I welcome the additional money that's being put aside for highways and roads, because we're under increasing pressure to build more and more houses by the government, and we also then need to have the infrastructure when we build those houses, and we need to maintain our roads. And as this is part of my portfolio, I really welcome it. There are complaints come through quite a lot for potholes and roads that need resurfacing. So this money will be very welcome, and I'm sure our residents will see the benefit of it. So thanks for that bit of news. Ash?
Was that a question? Do you want Councillor Cartman to agree with that?
I'd love Councillor Cartman.
Thank you. Okay, well.
I agree with
Lovely,
that,
thank
Councillor Solomon.
So before we agree any more, let's go to the vote. Are there any in favour of the vote as recommended? That's a unanimous. No, that's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 14, which is the development programme and economic strategy for Western Business Quarter, and Councillor Mark Caniford.
Thank you again, and fairly dry, but so very important. And I'd like to thank Jane Harrison for this report, and she's been supported heavily by Jenny Ford in terms of the work that's gone in here, or vice versa, but they certainly put a lot of work into this. This is really a key example of how we start sorting things out through supporting our economic strategy and development plans. This paper sets out the business case to deliver the infrastructure and servicing to plots that are in ownership of North Somerset in our business quarter at Junction 21. The site is strategically important, of course, as we all know, since, not just for employment, but since the completion of Foodworks Southwest, the Innovation Centre, which sadly we haven't yet had an opportunity to go and see, but it was started last March in lockdown and is full. And I think that simply proves the demand and the opportunity that we have here. We have to, of course, look into the future. That is part of what we do. And we have several investment opportunities here in the food and drinks industry. We have two major companies who want to expand into our area, but we simply cannot provide them with the space or the facilities to be able to do that currently. And this is all part of trying to do that. And I think it's really important to say that this site could bring forward 750 jobs. If the right businesses are there, and they are certainly within the sort of food and drinks industry, which would be absolutely great. And I'll let Jenny comment further on that if she chooses in a minute. We also have other successes down there, the Hive, who manage Workspace. They are full, they are struggling. World Business Park is in the same position. So we do have an opportunity now, just to understand this funding. This is a 11.1 million support scheme. It is in the West of England Revolving Infrastructure Fund, which I believe is an interest-free fund, but we do have to make regular payments back. So as the land comes forward or the land gets developed, we can make those payments back. And the benefit to North Somerset, of course, is the jobs, and good jobs, we would hope, and also the business rate retention that we will benefit from. So if the funding this is retrospective in the sense that we have gone forward with the outline business case, and we want the support of that, which I'm aware of executive members are aware of. And there are a couple of questions that I will come back from the Councillor Richardson, which I'll answer in a minute when other people have had a chance to ask a few questions as well. Thank you, Chair.
So do I take it you're going to recommend this?
I will be very happy to recommend those four
do I see a seconder? Councillor Bridger, thank you. I've got Jenny Ford, did you want to say anything? Okay, thank you, Jenny. I've got Bridget Petty wanted to ask a question.
Thank you. It was more of a supportive statement, but just recognising that in this report, I'm delighted to see the section around impacts for climate change, climate emergency and environmental implications. Obviously, whenever any new development is proposed, there will be potential environmental impact. However, the fact that this report highlights that this is a brownfield site in a sustainable location is something I can certainly get behind. I think that it is really important that North Somerset Council supports our district to thrive and helps local businesses grow and establish and offer job opportunities. So that this location, being close to our largest population of Weston-super-Mare, and having good access to the train station at Whirl and having good access by bike or by walking to the Weston-super-Mare population, for me, makes it a good site to have economic development so that our businesses can thrive. And I like being part of an administration who puts this at the heart of what we're trying to achieve. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Petty. I've got Councillor Mike Bell.
Thank you, Don. I just wanted really just to emphasise what an important investment this is, and whilst it's absolutely not risk-free, as colleagues have said, you know, we have a critical challenge and need to create more jobs and employment opportunities in Weston-super-Mare, and we know that the enterprise area has already been successful in attracting commercial and private sector investment and new jobs to the zone, and the business quarter is an important part of that going into the future. That, you know, there was a time when previous administrations on this council talked about jobs, not houses, but didn't actually deliver that. Well, actually, we need both of those things. We need jobs and we need homes, and it's critical that the council puts its money where its mouth is in terms of supporting and investing and enabling the right kinds of commercial developments that will create employment. So I really welcome this recommendation, and hopefully we'll get spades in the ground quickly and start to create the right conditions for businesses to come in, thrive, succeed, and create jobs for now and into the future.
Thank you, Mike. I mean, I completely echo your comments. I mean, this is part of our overall plan, isn't it, to improve the economic base of Weston-super-Mare as a key town in both the west of England and in the greater Somerset area, so I absolutely applaud that. I don't see any further questions. We've got a proposal and second. I was going to ask for...
Just I think it would be appropriate to answer Councillor Richardson's questions put into us. So if I can, I'll try and keep that really short as I can, and I appreciate Councillor Richardson's involvement in that. So he was concerned about the speed of delivering of this project, the fact that he felt we might be rushing. I'm not sure if that's his view or just a concern he had from reading the papers. Well, it is a priority commercial site on brownfield, and I don't think I would be embarrassed or sad to say that, bluntly, we need to bring it forward really quickly. And if we get this opportunity around the revolving fund, then we can bring it forward at no cost, in the sense that we won't get charged interest and we will recover the money. Foodworks has generated so much interest that if we do not continually move forward, we will move backwards. There's only two directions we can take, and that's up or down. And up is the way to go if we want to create jobs and opportunities for people. And I think yourself and Mike and Bridget have made that really clear, and thanks for the support on that. We have the opportunity to borrow this money, and it is in our mid-term financial plan to be able to cope with this site and deal with it, so I'm not concerned in that sense. How are we controlling the risks? Well, Jane and her team, they report fortnightly. They have experienced representatives from across all our teams to report on progress and report into the Capital Board chaired by Lucy. There is a full risk management in the report, and I'm personally comfortable with that, and I'm sure members are as well. But happy to answer any further questions he might have on that. In terms of the funding and the work around the full business case, currently we're working on the outline, or we've submitted the outline business case, but the full business case has been started, but not significantly. We will wait to see whether we have the funding coming from the fund, and then obviously we'll get on with it properly. But I think it would be fair to say that some officer time has gone into this, but that's all so far. But we will have to engage specialists who will be able to work out what we need to create, how we need to create it, whether we sell land, whether we lease land, however, which way would be best to create that employment that we are so desperate to kick-start. And I think, as Councillor Bell said, that we have been waiting for so many years. It's really good to see that we are putting it on the table and we're the ones making this happen, and I do thank officers. I think there was just a couple of other questions. There have been two previous sets of viability. Specialist commissions were taken in 2019 to work on this. Both confirmed a significantly negative position if we were to build actual premises. So this is why we just need to bring this forward and let businesses that build premises. And I think that is by far the best direction we take. Can we confirm the scheme is not expected to generate income? Well, it's not expected to, but it depends how you see income. If we can generate business rates, that's income to North Somerset. If we can create jobs, that's income to our residents. So that's what we do, isn't it, as a council? Those are the things we want to do. But it's not going to be a money maker for North Somerset. But, you know, if we do it properly and we do it successfully, we will probably find a positive position at the end of it. So I'm comfortable with that as well, knowing that councils provide services, jobs and opportunities and not just profit. The worst case scenario, well, we have a crash in the market. I don't think that's likely. Business is expanding very quickly. That land is required. There's a significant interest in the area around Weston-super-Mare for employment-led land. I am not concerned about those proposals. Yes, of course, something could come out like in 2008, which would catch us all on the hop. But as we know, in 2008, we recovered, the position has recovered, and we would do the same again if the worst happens. But I do not believe that would be the case. And also, if, for example, we had a lesser turnout from the opportunities, then we could renegotiate our deal with the revolving infrastructure fund, as it is a local fund, a West of England fund, and therefore not a national position, and therefore we can discuss and understand the problems we suffer. And I don't know whether Jenny wants to add anything to those comments. Oh, let me turn off.
I don't think I've got an awful lot to add, thank you. Just on the last point, I mean, clearly in taking this funding, we need to be able to provide assurances that we will repay. I think the bit about renegotiation would only be in a very worst case scenario. And I think in that kind of national, international disaster situation, I'm sure the LEP would be trying to help and not hinder. So yes, that's all I have to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. And the item is on the West of England Joint Committee agenda on Friday at Kingswood. And I would say that in some ways, almost adverse to Councillor Richardson, that having been on a Western Gateway call this morning, all other councils are pressing to get economic development going. And if we're not pushing forward on this, we run the grave risk of not delivering anything at all and just continuing to outsource our people to jobs elsewhere. So we need to get on with these. With this risk taking to a degree to get the jobs and the economic development into North Somerset. Bridget.
I think linked to that, it was telling a number of years ago when we received a report that stated that although many of our areas in North Somerset have good employment rates, that the jobs in North Somerset are below national average salaries. And I think that this administration is committed to doing what we can to try to raise the quality of the jobs and the salaries that people are offered that live within North Somerset. So I'm really motivated to be part of an administration that drives for good quality businesses being based within North Somerset and driving up the quality of life for all of us.
Lovely, thank you. So shall we go to the vote now? There's recommendations of the paper. All those in favour? There are none against. That's unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. We now move on to item 15, Development Programme Updates and Consultation Programme. Now, I need to ask colleagues, there is an exempt paper on this. Are you going to ask any questions in relation to the exempt paper? Lovely. Okay, Mark.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's on me again. I would like to propose we accept the recommendations in this report. The report follows the adoption of the development strategy that we, or Council, approved last February. This report includes the updates from Phase 1, Phase 2A sites. These are proposals which have already met or in our plan. So those items there, I think we can take as read. That said, we also need to acknowledge that money from the programme and selling these sites and being able to do that will start to develop the sort of things that we want to do as a council: affordable housing, bringing sites forward for schools, bringing sites forward to the things that our communities continually grumble about and tell us that we're not doing. So what I would like to propose is, I'm not going to spend too much time on this today, simply because I think this is part of the process, and to go out on consultation over our strategies so far and the proposed sites. I think it's really important to say that these sites, we haven't decided what to do with the sites that are in the red papers. There are complications with some of those sites, and we need to make sure members and we know exactly what can be done, what can't be done, what proposals we have, but it is the right and proper manner to go in terms of deciding how we deal with the assets the council have, and not simply just blunder along hoping that something might crop out of the end of it if we keep doing this work. A huge amount of work has been done on our assets, and again, I'd like to thank Jenny and her team, because they have done huge amounts through the assets. And I will, in this particular case, invite Jenny to make any further comments she would like to, because it is a complex bit of work, but it also, being around development programmes, will cause an awful lot of concern and upset amongst members, if not just amongst the public. And I think they don't need to be worried about anything at this stage, because this is about adopting the opportunity to discuss the things that could happen. Would you like to add anything, Jenny?
Thank you, that was very helpful. As you say, the paper does include some updates on the development sites that are already agreed, but the primary purpose is to agree the parameters of consulting on the future sites in the summer, and to emphasise the point you've just made, which it's the start of consultation, it's not preempting that consultation, and so we hope that will be open, fair and transparent in line with the sort of corporate values. And where there are locations with sites proposed, our intention is to do some sort of more direct engagement with those areas, as well as the North Somerset wide consultation through the usual website channels, etc. I think that's probably, for the moment, what I've got to say, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, so we've got the paper there. Mark, do you want a question?
Councillor Richardson, again, I believe, put in a question.
I would have said that his question is answered under 3.5 within the papers myself.
He did mention the Group 2A sites.
Yes, well, it's saying these sites are already formally allocated for development in the adopted North Somerset sites and allocation
and that's the answer, so you've done it. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. So do you want to propose this, Mark? We've got a seconder, Councillor Cartman. Thank you. And then we've got questions. Councillor Cartman.
I'd just like to make a comment and a question as well. I mean, this is exactly what we should be doing as local government. It's got 2,000 new homes potential, 500 affordable, 30 acres of commercial space, and it's some really great work by Jenny Ford. Thank you, Jenny, and by the executive team as well. And I think I would like to draw the contrast between what our MPs are doing, which is absolutely nothing. This is out for consultation, which is actually a really important part of letting local people shape their environment. And we now stand in front of a government who wants to impose upon us significantly stupid targets for housing, way above what we need or could to cope with locally, a planning reform that tramples on local democracy and removes any form of consultation, and we have two MPs who even disagree with each other on whether the targets we're being set are actually targets. So I wholeheartedly support this. I just wish, and I think my exec colleagues would agree with me, the government could pull their finger out and get organised. To use a football analogy, we have got a lot of depth of talent on our benches. It seems like the government aren't even sat on the blooming bench. Thank you. Okay. I shall support it.
Councillor Bell, is there any football analogy from you?
If you give me a minute, I'm sure I can come up with one. I just wanted to inject a slight note of caution, and that is to just firstly emphasise what Jenny said about the fact that we are going to consultation on this development programme. So it shouldn't be implied when so obviously a number of sites are in the public domain already, and indeed the other sites, once the due diligence and legal checks has been completed, will also be in the public domain, but it shouldn't be implied that that means that decisions have been made and that the land is automatically going to be sold off or developed in some way, because we are going through a consultation and we do want local communities to engage in that and provide their feedback and their experience and their views about development. And I think we also have to recognise that whilst there is the potential to help us meet our housing target and provide homes for local people, and there is potential to generate a significant potential capital receipt as part of this, which we can use to invest in local services, that has to be taken in the round, and I think we have to recognise that none of these are easy, simple, straightforward and universally popular decisions and proposals. So I just wanted to inject that sort of slight note of caution, and just to try and offer assurance to members and to the community that we are absolutely consulting with an open mind. We're trying to set out the framework that we're working in and the ideas that have been developed through the development strategy, and to try and get the best possible value that we can out of the assets that we own as a council, but that shouldn't be interpreted as a foregone conclusion. You know, we're absolutely open to discussions, ideas and feedback about the right approach. So I suppose to extend the football analogy, the pro-development and purse string holders feel that they've put a goal in the back of the net and gone into the lead, but there's plenty of opportunity for communities to take the net down and take it home if they want through the consultation programme. I've stretched that unbelievably, and I apologise.
Was that an early goal?
Thank you, Mike. I think that's really important.
Bridget, Hetty, have you got a similar sporting analogy you can use?
No, I'm going to leave it there. No, but I do think that points that that Councillor Bell was raising are very important and really are important to our communities, because this council has made big efforts to improve its consultation and engagement, but it is really important that the community actually feel that when they engage and when they comment, that their voice is heard. And I think that part of this consultation process will need to do a good job in recognising and explaining what those broader objectives are for this administration, and asking our communities how these sites could meet those objectives and why they should or should not be part of that situation. Because we all know that through this year we've all valued our open spaces more and our green spaces. We also know that there will be places that are listed as brownfield sites. So there are different aspects that matter to local communities, and then considering the wider picture. And I do hope that we'll make every effort to ensure that this consultation and engagement provides good opportunity to both listen and then respond with, we've heard what you said and this has influenced our decision making. And that's part of my current portfolio lead in consultation and engagement, to ensure that we continue to increase our efforts to make sure those voices are listened to, but it's clear when there is room for influence and when there is less. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bridger.
Thank you, Don. Yeah, very briefly. Yeah, just picking up on the points raised by Mike and Bridget, really, I'd like to support those too, just sneaking in stoppage time here with a quick comment. So I think when the local plan paper came to exec in April, and we discussed that, I mean, I encouraged elected members to actually lean into the process and start community conversations, grown-up community conversations, and I think this is also part of that conversation too. Residents need to be aware of what land is out there and potentially available, which might save some green fields, frankly, that are under pressure, as Ash was saying. So I think this is incredibly important, so this should be, part of the mix. So again, reiterating what I said in April, encourage elected members to engage their residents, their parish councils, town councils, and officers, and have grown-up conversations about, how to shape their environment locally. Thank you.
Don, if I can just blow the full-time whistle on this.
Wish I could.
All I'm going to say is that those comments are, and I think Bridget and I will have those conversations around that consultation because it is highly important. What I would request, though, is members step back and let our communities see what's being up there. Once we've gone through the due diligence on all this stuff, the members of public will have the opportunity to see what they are, because there's no point bringing stuff forward which can't be brought forward. And I would like to know that our North Somerset councillors can step back slightly, let their communities engage with this, and so we can get through a proper consultation where our members of public really do have a voice on some of this stuff, and we can then benefit our communities with the decisions that we're going to make.
Lovely, thank you. I mean, we do need to deliver more housing. We need to deliver the housing that people in North Somerset need and require, rather than the housing that the developers can make most profit on. And that is the key driver for me in terms of how we deliver that for the people of North Somerset. Okay, we've got a debate. We've got a recommendation proposed and seconded. Can we have a vote, please? All those in favour of the recommendations? That's unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. We now move on to item 16, which is all reports of executive councillors. I have an item on the Queen's Birthday Honours list. Before I go, does any other colleagues want to say anything? Councillor Mike Bell.
Thank you, Don. I just wanted to say something quickly about obviously the ongoing COVID pandemic situation and the rise in case numbers that we've had in North Somerset over the last few weeks. So in common with most parts of England, we've seen the COVID case rate rise, particularly amongst younger age groups over the last few weeks. To put that into some sort of context, about a month ago, we were tracking around 5 cases per 100,000 residents, and our case rate now is up to just under 80 per 100,000 residents. So you can see that it has accelerated in a short space of time. The good news is that hasn't translated into increased hospital admissions, and there are no signs that we're seeing people particularly negatively affected in terms of their conditions and symptoms and so on. But it does just underline that COVID is still very much present in the community, and that we do need to keep doing the basic things. I know we've all got a bit fed up of it, but we need to keep doing the hand washing, keeping our distance from people we don't live with, covering our faces in indoor spaces and so on, until such time as those restrictions are completely lifted. What I would also say is that it's absolutely clear now that there's a link between higher vaccine uptake and lower COVID case numbers. So I would strongly encourage anybody in North Somerset who hasn't yet had a vaccination or is due their second dose to please get on with it and get that dose done. Anybody aged 18 or over can now get their vaccination. There's good local access across North Somerset and in the mass vaccination centre at Ashton Gate, and in fact there's a walk-in vaccination session taking place at the Winter Gardens in Weston tomorrow between 5 and 9, where anyone can go without making an appointment and get their vaccination. So there's plenty of opportunities out there. Please make the most of them, and hopefully we can finally come out the end of this pandemic. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you to colleagues who've arranged for the mobile test unit to be in my own ward today after the spike in cases in Abbottsley, Pill, East and Gordano. So thank you, colleagues. I didn't speak to the team this morning in the van. They'd had a good uptake of people taking the tests away and indeed being shown how to do the test. So we're certainly responding to that, and thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so I'm just going to do a little piece here which I think is pretty important, especially for those viewing. Queen's Birthday Honours List. You might have seen the news last weekend that a number of our North Somerset residents have been recognised in the Queen's Birthday Honours. Of the 18 residents in Somerset, 7 are from North Somerset, and it's great to see people who do so much for our community being recognised in this way. Sue Turner from Nailsea, the former Chief Executive of Quartet Community Foundation, received an OBE in recognition of her commitment to social justice. Andy Tilden from Winscombe, the former Director of Operations at Skills for Care, also received an OBE recognising his outstanding contribution to developing the skills and knowledge of the adult care workforce. Adele Haysom of Portishead was awarded an MBE for services to education. Adele is the chair of the Lighthouse Schools Partnership and has worked with schools and trusts across the southwest to strengthen and develop governance best practice. Dr. Tom Wells, also from Portishead, is an oncology consultant at Western Hospital. He received an MBE for his services to medicine and people with disabilities in the medical profession. Emma Blackmore from Portishead and Colin and Jackie Payne from Western Supermare have all been awarded the British Empire Medal for their work during COVID-19. Emma has been a key member of the Portishead Coronavirus Support Network group founded last March to help residents to support each other and help elderly and vulnerable people during the pandemic. And Jackie and Colin are two of our shared lives carers and welcomed 3 people in their own home last year to live with them during lockdown. So I'm sure that colleagues will join with me in congratulating them and indeed thanking them for all the work they've done in our community over very many years. So thank you all. Okay, move on to, I'm going to take item 18 next. Mr. Brain, are there any items of urgent business that we need to consider?
None, Chairman.
Okay, we'll now move to item 17, which is the development programme, acquisition and development of Western Town Centre site, which is an exempt report. So colleagues, we need to pass the following motion. The press, public and officers not required by the members, the Chief Executive or Director to remain during the exempt session be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following item of business on the ground its consideration will involve the disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, section 110L of the Local Government Act 1972, that is information related to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, are exempt for reasons of commercial sensitivity. I need a proposer for that. Councillor Cartman, a seconder. Councillor Caniford, thank you. All those in favour of the exemption? Thank you. So we now moved into exempt session. I have to ask...
Chairman, if you could hold on a second while we stop the stream.
Yes. I was going to ask Mr. Riggle to switch the stream off, yes.